Greetings! Welcome to another tutorial about Bloomreach XM with XIN Mods. In this video, we're going to be deploying a Bloomreach instance within just a few minutes using Docker. Let's get into it. Of course, before you can deploy anything with Docker, make sure you've installed it on your machine. I already have, so I'm going to get started. So open up a terminal. And the first thing we're going to do is create a new folder. So I'm going to call it Bloomreach XM deploy. I'm going to go into it. It's empty. Then the only thing we have to do is create a Docker compose YAML configuration file. And the one that we will be using looks like this. And as you can see, there are two service definitions inside this Docker compose YAML file. The first defines a container that runs MySQL. And the image that we're using is called XIN Solutions Bloomreach XIN Mods MySQL Pre-Seed. And you could use your own MySQL, the regular MySQL image, but the pre-seed pre-populates your Bloomreach database in such a way that it already includes the XIN Mods common package, which you always want to install to begin with anyway. So I advise you to use the pre-seed. And it's got a volume attached here called MySQL data that will contain the database files. Then the second container is the Bloomreach XM container that runs this image. And this image contains an Nginx web server. It contains the Tomcat web services, and on that Tomcat instance is deployed a Bloomreach application, both the CMS and the site wars. Then there are a number of environment variables that allow us to configure our Tomcat to know how to connect to MySQL and where they can find our Bloomreach database. Of course, if you're going to be using this in a production scenario, you might want to consider actually using different usernames and perhaps providing a password. Some functionality inside XIN Mods needs to know where the application is being hosted. So by default, we're just going to assume it's being hosted locally. And so after you deploy this and you know the network IP of your Bloomreach instance, you just change your host file to point this host name to that IP address. And again, this also has a volume attached. So the Bloomreach repo, this is where the repository files are being kept for this CMS. And this container can communicate with the MySQL container. So that's what we need. Great. So let's copy this. And you'll be able to find this this file in a link in the description. So if you're curious, just use that. Okay, copied it. Let's create a file called docker compose.yaml. Paste it in. Great. Right. Quit. Amazing. So the next step is us going to be running up Docker Compose. We're going to run it like this for now, just to see how it works. But if you want to run it detached, you add the -d parameter. So let's start it up. So it's creating a network, creating two volumes, and then starts both our containers, which is pretty cool. So let's start another terminal. All right. Let's go back into our thing. So now, we've run up the two containers, and in the background, our Bloomreach instance, I'm sure, is starting up the repository, so it'll take a little while. But now we can see that something is running. So we see, so our CMS is running and the pre-seed is running. And these are their names, so that's good. So what we can do as well is to see the network that they're in. So by default, if you create a Docker Compose, the network is going to be called the name of the folder you're in plus _ default. So this is the one we're interested in. So now what we're going to do is going to inspect that network. So we want to understand at what IP address these things live. Deploying default. Deploying default. Right. So you get a bunch of output here from about the network, but the thing we're interested in is the containers over here. So you can see our Bloomreach instance is at this IP address. So let me just copy that and make a note of it. Here, great. And our MySQL runs on this one. Great. So now what we want to do is just to check how things are going. So we're going to go and open a terminal inside the Bloomreach XM container using bash. Then what you can see here is just the normal Tomcat distribution. So if we want to see the logs, we go into the logs file and we say, okay, let's do this. Let's tail all the hippo log files. So these are good signs. Usually this means it's been doing stuff, and yeah, by default the instance is running with admin credentials admin. So that's something you want to change probably if you're going to put this on the internet. Great. Okay, so now we can be pretty sure that this is running. So let's close this terminal and let's open a browser. And let's take this address that we had and open it. And there you go. Now we are running a Bloomreach instance in our browser from Docker. And you can notice that it doesn't have the port 88 extensions because we are communicating with the CMS through Nginx directly. So let's log in, admin. Yeah, first time takes a little while. But then there you go. Great. Now it's ready for either development or deployment of your packages, which you can do here. So if you go /mods/packages index.jsp, you have to fill in your admin credentials. And then here you go. Now you're ready to ingest packages and populate the content repository. So yeah, that in just a few minutes is how you would set up a number of Docker containers that will run your CMS. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of thing, check out the playlist that popped up on the screen. And if you want to be notified when a new tutorial appears, make sure to subscribe. See you next time.